So everybody knows BMW's known for their high quality finishing, performance, driving dynamics, overall quality feel, and stylish looks. So all of you guys out there know already that I love my BMW cars. Of course, I've got a couple myself. I've always owned one or two at any given time. But I am the first to admit that there are reliability concerns, more for some of the versions than others, of course. But I'm going to explain to you why, three main reasons why BMWs are so unreliable. Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Mark with exoticcarplayplace. The first reason that BMWs are somewhat unreliable, at least by most people's standards, are the electronics. And when I say electronics, how about the complexities? What? You know, BMW is sort of state-of-the-art. They're always breaking through new trends and new designs, new technology. But when they do that, there's always a risk of things not being worked out properly. They're trying new things that maybe haven't been tried and true. You know, they were the first ones to come up with more or less the iDrive scenario. Everybody sort of followed suit after that. But, you know, iDrives and fully loaded features. We've got power windows and mirrors and all kinds of different safety technologies that adds a whole gambit of complexity to the car. And because it adds complexity, there's always a risk of things to go wrong. And BMW is not short on failures, of course, in terms of electronic and electric-based failures. Other reasons why BMW electronic systems and electrical systems sometimes act up or become slightly less reliable is, you know, just the way it's been installed. Some of the wiring has been routed in ways that creates pinch points. Another classic one that's been known to cause fires and have led to issues are drain plugs and poorly located drain plugs that allow water to dissipate away from collection points. And of course, the water sits there, sloshes around, and sometimes contaminates wiring and wiring connectors, ultimately leading to deterioration of connections as well as the wiring itself, and of course outright failure of whatever circuit it fed. So that's another reason. You want some great examples of failures? How about door locks, window regulators, wipers, sunroofs? And you'd never believe this, guys, turn signals is another one that people for some reason associate with BMW cars and BMW drivers. Now there's also ones that become more than an inconvenience where, you know, a door lock isn't working or a power mirror isn't working. How about ones that create safety hazards? And there's actually recalls on some electrical-based issues. Of course, the PCV heater element in some cars, of course, in some of the E90s and some of those generations we explained in previous videos, 2007 to 2011 model years of many different models, of course, had this valve issue with there's an internal heater in this PCV that would short out and cause an engine fire. That was a big one. How about a outright main wiring deterioration to the point where the wiring comes apart, and when it comes apart the whole car goes black, and it can happen at speeds. Very dangerous, very hazardous. There's been cases noted where people have veered off the road and got either severely injured or killed as a result of total loss of visibility, lights, and power, everything in the car. So there's been lots of examples of, you know, things just failing electrically and things that outright cause safety issues on the electrical system. So the second thing that is a major failure point, or why people would consider these cars unreliable, is the extensive use of plastic. Plastic parts are not new to the BMW world. Everybody knows, that's no secret there, that BMW uses plastic in a lot of things. For example, cooling systems where thermostat housings and water pumps and radiators and hoses and lines that are all constructed of plastic that deteriorate very, very quickly. How about another one? On a lot of the inline cars, particularly inline six cars, you have a problem, you know, E46s, E90s. I mean, the list goes on that utilize inline six-cylinder engines that find themselves with warping valve covers and, of course, leaking valve cover gaskets as a result of that. Oh no, not another one. You have leaks, you have twisting and warping or rotting of the gasket, or, of course, the valve cover itself, which leads to, again, leaks, possibly misfiring, and just an overall sense of deterioration, which really isn't awe-inspiring. Or how about the S65 and the S85 engines, which share the same basic infrastructure and architecture? That's the wonderful M3 and M5 from about 2005 to about 2011 or so. Those cars utilized a throttle actuator assembly. Now, the throttle actuator is a great little device, but it's not great on the inside where there exists little plastic gears that rotate and they strip out. And when they strip out, you get a code, the engine goes into limp mode, and you can no longer enjoy the spirited fun that the car was intended to provide. Another one is just generally, if you ever taken door panels off, you want to run some wire maybe for speakers, or you've got to do a repair and you have to access something in behind a panel. Well, BMW uses these wonderful little plastic fasteners that you pop them once, and I would say it's a 50-50 crapshoot whether you can reuse that fastener. Often they break off, the head comes apart, or they just get too sloppy and they can't push and retain the original piece. So a lot of times those fasteners fall apart. Too many plastic fasteners. I remember having an old air-cooled 911 back in the day. There was almost no plastic fasteners. Everything was screwed down with a metal screw. How about another example? Everybody knows about the wonderful N54 engine. You know that great twin turbocharged engine that they stuffed into the 335s and the 535s? Amazing drivetrain for performance, not so much for reliability, largely because there was a lot of plastic used in there. Of course, for the cooling system we described already, but even things like the turbocharged pipe. So the boost pipe essentially was made of sort of a corrugated pipe. It wasn't very strong, and if you applied any more boost than you would expect normally from factory, often they split and they would leak boost. And sometimes even in stock form, they would just, the overheating and heating cycles, they would split, they would come apart, and you'd find yourself with a situation of leaking boost and of course reduced power as a result. How about other things? It's not just about the plastic. How about like the great N62 engine? You know that V8 motor that we talked about in previous videos? That engine uses a particular style of valve guide seal that's just really not fitted for its application. As a result, the valve guide seal leaks oil by and creates a scenario where the car burns a whole lot of oil. Again, an ugly scenario. So it's a mismatch of either materials, the parts, the sizing, the specification, whatever it is, it's a material concern. And of course, it's the rubberized O-ring that they put as a seal around the guide and the valves. So the third major reason that you're going to find why a BMW is unreliable are due to things like the fact that BMW is very heavy in engineering to design cars that drive very, very well, are pleasing to look at and pleasing to listen to, but they're a little light on research and development. They're a little light on the follow-through. They're a little light on testing some of the concepts. And I'll give you some great examples of that, where BMW fell grossly short on the research and development, or lack thereof. How about the great little N47 turbo diesel engine that it was notoriously bad in the sense of breaking timing chains or timing chains coming loose and engines catastrophically failing, of course. Boom! Very devastating to an owner. Of course, huge dollars to fix, and almost as huge even just to change as a preventative measure. Again, we spoke already again of the S65 and the S85 engines from the great M3 with the V8 and the wonderful V10, high-revving V10 in the M5, the E60 M5. But the S85 is so great! And the whole design of tolerances were way too tight. The specification of oil was too heavy, and a combination of overall design was not conducive to long life on the rod bearings. And the rod bearings would pretty much eat themselves up like popcorn on a Saturday night in front of a great movie. They just gobble, and they're gone. So that was a problem with those cars. And they were always cars that you could expect failures somewhere between 60 to 90,000 miles. There would almost be a guarantee of reaching the limits of those bearings. So if you have a car in that mileage range, you'd probably want to have it checked out. Do an oil analysis, or just be prepared to do that maintenance yourself. Get those bearings swapped out. Weakness. Research and development did not flush out the fact that tolerances were too damn tight, the oil was too heavy, and overall, it was just a poor engineering exercise that evolved into this wonderfully exciting engine to drive, but sadly extremely unreliable. Another example was, we just mentioned it, the S62, and talking about materials. How about the valve guide seals there? How about the cooling transfer lines that were made of plastic and they broke and they were very difficult to get at? So they made it very difficult for the do-it-yourself or mechanic to even access any of that stuff. As well, to rebuild an engine because you were consuming oil due to the valve guide seals just made that car just very frustrating to own for a lot of people, even though they were a lot of fun in terms of the power. But at the end of the day, when you had to get that car to the shop, chances are you were going to pay a pretty hefty bill on that N62 engine. How about another one? The wonderful, one of the latest models, the M4 GTS. We all know the M4s are spectacularly great cars. I loved my time with one recently I did a review on. But the GTS also has a problem that they didn't capture, and now I know there's some issues and some customers that are fighting BMW over this. Is becoming kind of a big deal, but fortunately the numbers of GTSs are low, so I would expect the amount of feedback from customers is minimal. But at the end of the day, those cars had issues, obviously, with the water injection systems, but more importantly, a sudden acceleration surging under, liftoff of the throttle. It would continue to accelerate and sometimes creating undesirable and dangerous condition. How about another one? A lot of these direct injected engines like the N54, N55 and such, and their carbon buildup. What is up with that? You'd have to take the engine, basically the intake apart, send it in, get it walnut blasted, and get it entirely re-cleaned, put it back into service. Again, kind of a maintenance intensive deal, don't you think? And then, how about another one with the M3s and M4s, like a 2016, 2017 M3, M4? Did you know there's a recall out because there is a drive shaft issue? And the drive shafts, if it was a one-piece combined unit, the flange could twist off. So it wasn't designed to tolerate stresses for a long period of time. It would work well for the first little bit, but then it was recognized that they can actually shear and come apart. It could cause very unexpected driving situations, just shearing, or you'd lose power altogether because you're no longer connected to the road. And so you'd find yourself pulling over to the corner, wondering why, what happened to the power. It went away because of drive shafts. Drive shafts were a problem. Also in the, that generation of M3, M4s, in that wonderful engine. It's a great engine overall, but how about the crank hub issues that have been creeping in there, popping their ugly heads in there once in a while? Crank hub issues. For those that don't know a crank hub, let's just put it this way. That's a part within the engine that has to stay tight, has to stay intact. And if it comes apart like it can because of the issues, it's a catastrophic engine failure. So that has been an issue that has reared up in several occasions as well. And then we just talk about in general. I use a car like the N54 engine in the 335 as an example because that's a car I've been looking at buying, and not for its lack of reliability, for other reasons. However, that car, in my opinion, so lacked research and development that in essence that car had so many problems, was assigned to me that it really needed more tests because it had a whole list of issues. Things, for example, like wastegate rattle. It had leaky gaskets for the oil filter housing. It had leaking down fuel injectors. It had turbo boost pipes that would crack. It had carbon buildup. It just had way too many things going against it. We won't even talk about things on the inside, like on the coupes where you get the seatbelt retainer, that part could break off. There was little things, the overall quality control on that car was slightly substandard, I would say, even by BMW standards, or by even any standards for that matter. The N54 and the 335s in general combined were a weak car in the sense of a lacking of testing, and created a car that, in my opinion, wasn't totally ready for the market. I think they were trying to rush it out there. It was a new thing for BMW, or relatively new in the recent history, by putting turbocharged engines at work in their powertrains. So, unfortunately, that, in my mind, that wasn't really ready for the market. So those are the three big things, guys, why BMWs are considered unreliable. It's electrical, it's materials, and of course, it's the lack of testing and overall care and attention to quality control issues. So those are the three big things, guys. I really hope you enjoyed the video. You make sure you give it a thumbs up, like. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel with that little thingy down there. And of course, hit that little bell notification. Make sure that you hear about my next great video that pops down the road. So I'd love to hear from you guys. please drop some comments below. I want to hear what your opinion is. I know I'm missing a lot of ideas here. I wanted to scratch the surface, give you something to think about, but really that is the main reason why BMW is considered unreliable today. Thanks again, everybody. Mark here, checking out with Exotic Car Play Place. I'd love to see you real soon. Bye-bye.